Welcome to the agenda with me, Lasha in Douala, Cameroon. On tonight's edition of the program, we are talking conflicts in the African continent, but we are going to be focusing on the situation in DRC and Cameroon. We joined this evening by one of the doctors who is very much interested in researching on what is happening in the African continent when it comes to conflict. Stay with us. When we come back, you will discover our guest on tonight's edition of the agenda. Good evening, Dr. Elijah, and welcome to the agenda.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lasha. Thanks for having me one more time on your program.
You're welcome. Today we are today's edition of the program. We are focusing on conflicts in Africa. Our case study is the DRC Congo and what the international community is doing to salvage the situation of the local population over there. You've been researching on conflicts in Africa.
Yes, Mr. Lasha, this is an issue that hits very dear because of the importance of Africa in the international scene and what Africa brings to the table. But the unfortunate tragedy is the fact that while Africa has a lot to offer and Africa has a lot to bring to the table, Africa is being seen as that risky environment. Africa is being seen as that environment where a business cannot travel, business cannot succeed because of war, because of this, because of that. And it is doing a huge service to the continent of Africa. So the issue of war, particularly as we are discussing today, the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, it's an issue that hits very deep because, as we all know, Mr. Lasha, the Democratic Republic of Congo is a dire one. Just a step back, we know what's happening there is the fact that after the Rwanda genocide, a lot of the rebels, the Hutu rebels, they ran away to the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. And they were, when Paul Kagame came to power, he accused Mobutu that Mobutu was, taking side to those people that committed the genocide. So Kagame and his army came right into Eastern Democratic of Congo. And with the help of that time rebel leader, Joseph Kabila, he aligned with them and started fighting Mobutu. When Mobutu fell, Kabila took over power. Kabila decided to get rid of those Kagame armies and his people that were fighting, that helped him fight. And that is where the present problem in the Democratic Republic of Congo started, because those armies that fought alongside to expel Mobutu are saying they need to be part of the Congolese government. But the Congolese government is dragging feet and said, yes, you did help us to fight, but this is our territory. You people need to go back. It now results into this conflict upon conflict. And then we have other nations like Uganda, other nations like Rwanda that came in because of their interest in that region. And for the sake of our listeners, that is the richest region, the evil region, the richest region, the Eastern Democratic Republic.
This international community, UN, even the African Union, they seem not to be doing anything to help the suffering masses in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo.
Yeah, Mr. Lasha, let's put a spade, but it is true that these organizations, they are not sufficiently doing what they're supposed to do. But the ball is in the court of the Africans. We have been saying all over the TV and radio, all over in Africa, Pan-Africanists are saying, let Africans bring African solutions to African problems. But we do not see that. Why should we wait for the United Nations, wait for United States, wait for France or this to come and solve our own local problem when we know the root cause of it? Africans should be able to solve African problem, use African solution to solve African problem. Now, to answer your question directly, you understand just recently that Felix Tshisekedi said MINUSMA and the United Nations organization Peace Corps that was there were not doing enough. So they asked them to withdraw and take their forces away. So as we speak, there's going to be an election in 2023, that's in December. But at the same time that the election is going to be taking place, the United Nations forces, peace forces that were there, are supposed to be withdrawn at the request of the population and the president. But mind you, Mr. Lasha, these people cannot do much when the local population have not come to some sort of peace agreement. The United Nations is not going to, you're not going to put forces behind every single individual. No. It is supposed to be the willingness of Africans to see that they resolve their problems so that conflict can be avoided or can be resolved on the continent of Africa. If we sit and we keep waiting for the United Nations, it's not going to happen. We've seen that elsewhere. The United Nations is not going to solve the problem in Cameroon.
Like I was saying,
the problem in Congo. It's not going to solve the problem in Sudan. The United Arab Emirates that is fighting. It's not Egypt that is fighting. There are two Sudanese rebels fighting for control of the country. So again, you answer the question very correctly. It is the greediness of the African leaders that's allowing the Western powers to come in, or Western conglomerates. I don't want to always call Western power, because these are organizations within Western countries that are exploiting the war, exploiting the nations of Africa to the detriment of African people. It is the same thing we see in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. We have close to 23 rebel groups. These rebel groups focus on the Kivu region, where you have the bauxite, the gold, the aluminum, and all these things, because that is where the resources are. The question is, I lay this sometimes on the feet of our beloved Paul Kagame. He's somebody I love because of the development in his country, but he's playing a very dangerous role in Congo. He should withdraw those forces, because that is where the crux of the matter is. Those Congolese forces that came there to topple Mobutu, they should be withdrawn back. Now that the war is over, they cannot take a stake.
It's easy to give guns. It's easy to give guns. It's easy to give guns to people, but difficult to take. Do you think it will be easy for Kagame to take those guns?
That is a problem. But let me explain. The M23, which is the major rebel group that is being backed by, because they have their own interest in that country. Look at Uganda. Uganda joined forces with Kagame. Look at Rwanda. They joined forces with Kagame. Zimbabwe was even involved. So there are about 7 countries that are involved in that region, and each of them have their own greedy agenda that they want to achieve in that Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. If these countries would take a step back, because Congolese army cannot, let me say this very categorically, the Congolese army cannot single-handedly defeat all those 7 countries. It's not one country. It's not just Kagame. More than 7 or 8 countries having an interest in your own land. So we need the Eastern African bloc to come together and put pressure to bear on some of these countries that are causing the war in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. When the Eastern bloc, they come together, that's why I say that sometimes the regional blocs that we have in Africa, they are toothless bulldogs. Because they are not doing enough to maintain peace within those regions so that we have development in those regions. So that is the problem. Congo by itself cannot defeat these 7 countries. We need them to come to the table to a negotiation and have peace in that region so that development can go on. Okay,
now let's look at what is happening. What resemblance does this situation in the DRC Congo mirror in our own country, Cameroon? What resemblance is conflict?
Well, it is good that you asked that question, because if you look at what's happening in the Northwest and the Southwest, we've had series of, dialogues, national dialogue. We have the tripartite, we had this, we had that, we had that. But the problem is still ongoing. That tells you that either that dialogue is happening with the wrong people, or that dialogue is not following the right channel. Number 2, that tells me that you either have a political will to resolve the problem is not there.
Okay, the political will is not there. So Now, why can the international community, when I talk about international community, I'm referring to the UN, the US, other blocs, European Union, not come in and pressure these governments that are involved in the Congo to resolve this problem politically, like you rightly said? There are some sanctions,
like I said before.
Yeah, some sanctions can be imposed on these countries to resolve the problem.
The case of Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo is a very peculiar one because there have been sanctions. There have been a ban on weapon transaction. But how far can you go? We still find weapons moving left and right and center. And then, like I said before, the United Nations has come in. They are trying to broker a deal. But
is it bite and blue? Bite and blue. They are doing bite and blue. The bite.
Well,
blue.
you could put it that way. You could put it that way. Like I said before, Mr. Louis.
Because if they really want to see the situation end, they can do it. They have that power to be able to do it. It's as if they are doing bite and blue.
Well, if you are asking the United Nations to go against international law and invade maybe Rwanda or invade Uganda and all these countries, you're going to see a complete breakout of chaos in that region. But again, I am not giving the international community a pass on this issue. Their own hands are not clean. But I keep saying, as all Pan-Africans have been saying all over Africa, if you listen to any TV station in Africa, they'll tell you that, oh, in Africa, we want African solutions to African problems. Why can't that be applied in this case? Why should we be looking for the United Nations, United States here and there, when we are singing the songs of African problems, African solution to African problems? So again, I keep saying that it is the lack of political will to solve this problem. It is the greediness of African countries and African leaders to resolve this issue. It is the wickedness of our leaders who do not see the suffering of the masses. They want to have everything for themselves and put in their pockets, and that's why they want this thing to go on. Because if you see the amount of resources that's being extracted from Kivu province alone, it will blow your mind. Despite the fact that war is going on, there's extraction that's going on at the same time. The minerals, what we use in our cell phones, the technology that we use, the minerals come from the Democratic Republic of Congo and China. So I talk about a very, very rich province which many countries have interest. So our leaders are to blame in all this.
Do they really have a choice? Do they really have a choice, our leaders?
Of course, they do have a choice 100%, Mr. Lasha. They do have a choice 100%. Why? If you are a leader who have the people at heart, you are going to put your own interest last and the interest of the people at heart. Imagine millions of people being killed. And some of the Western powers and African leaders to devise a means to portray the right situation, because when they come in there, they read the New York Times, they read the Financial Times, and they read all these international papers, and they do not have a first-hand information about what's happening on the ground. So we provide that information for them to be able to make concrete decisions in terms of investment in Africa. So number two, when the African countries that are in war going to borrow money from international organizations, this is where they get killed because of the risk that involves in borrowing their money or lending their money. These Bretton Woods institutions are going to lend their money at almost 8 times the interest rate that they will lend to other countries that are in peace. So therefore, they are borrowing that money at very high cost. And number two, investors, we are talking about private investors that want to come into the country to invest. They also look at those numbers from the international organization and say, hey, the international organization, they have run this country as a risk country. It's a very risky country. So if we are going in, we know that we're going to lose this, we're going to lose that, we cannot do this. And therefore they do what? They take a step back and they go somewhere else. That's why you see countries, small countries like Botswana, they are booming. Countries like Kenya, they are booming. Eastern African countries, they are booming because those private institutions are able to read some of these analyses that are being presented in the international community, and they said this is a less rich country in Africa to invest. And they go there and invest because there is no country that is going to develop based on government grants, government thing. Countries develop because of private investors that come to the country to invest their money and therefore develop the country and create jobs and technology and whatnot. So African countries that are going through this crisis are being hit very badly. And if you are going through their books, they admit to you that they are being hit in terms of development very badly.
So what is the way forward for these regions?
Yes, the way forward. The way forward is very simple, Mr. Louis. I want to bring the case of Cameroon, for example, because you live in Cameroon and you know the situation very well. The government of Cameroon understands the risk it is taking to let the war in the northwest and the southwest continue to linger on. The dialogue is not a static thing. You can organize a major national dialogue. It's a good thing. It's the first step ahead. But it shouldn't be static. These dialogues are supposed to continue until you get to an end. When you present an image, when you present a solution-centered image to the international community, even when you have problems, they know that the political will is there to resolve the problem, and they are reading it, they are saying it. But when you have a static solution to an ongoing problem and say, we have organized a national dialogue, therefore the problem has been solved. But every day, because the whole world is saying it, every day the whole world is saying, 5 people being killed in Manfe, 10 people being killed in Bamenda, this number of military have died. They know that you do not have a solution to the problem. But when they see, as I said before, that you have an ongoing process, a peace process in place, that you have initiated, and you are constantly collaborating in the continent of Africa.
Dr. Elijah Inwaku, Director of Center for African Development, thank you so much for honoring my invitation on this day on the agenda.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lasha. I appreciate it anytime.
You're welcome.